introduce fellow Rotarian Milton Jones. I love that no one wants to stop talking. That's a sign of success, by the way. All right. I'm now pleased to introduce fellow Rotarian Milton Jones, who will introduce our featured speaker today. Milton Jones is another one of the legends of this community, and this was recognized just this past August when the Atlanta Business League inducted Milton into its Legends Hall of Fame. And this was alongside such other heroes as John Lewis, Andrew Young, and Hank Aaron. No small order there. And as I was preparing to introduce him, I ran across his Hall of Fame introduction, and I decided that I could not say any better the words that describe his career so fittingly. So if you'll pardon me for shamelessly borrowing from that induction set of comments, I'm going to read from those comments as my way of introducing Milton Jones. The professional legacy of Atlanta native Milton Jones Jr. can be summarized with one word: history making. He made history during a career in banking that spanned more than 3 decades with the Bank of America. He was the first African American to hold the title of Georgia Market President for B of A, and managed an innovation program that was so impressive that it became the topic of a Harvard Business School case study. He was the first and only African American to sit on the 12-member policy committee and report directly to the CEO of Bank of America when he led Bank of America's Quality and Productivity Division. He was executive chairman and one of the 4 founders of Certus Bank, the largest bank ever founded by African Americans at more than $2 billion in assets. And this year, he made history as the first Black person to become the board chair of the United Negro College Fund. That accomplishment is in addition to his contributions as the past chair of the Atlanta Business League and service as the treasurer and board member of the 100 Black Men of America. Jones is also an entrepreneur and the co-founder of Peachtree Providence Partners, a holding company that operates a commercial insurance brokerage and consults with company owners in energy, financial products, healthcare, technology, manufacturing, and other business sectors. Please join me in welcoming Milton Jones.
Well, thank you, President. Hello? Thank you. Thank you, President Kelly. Actually didn't expect that long an introduction, but I'm glad to be able to hear it and be able to look back. We know at UNCF that a mind is a terrible thing to waste and a wonderful thing to invest in. We also know that your time is a terrible thing to waste and a wonderful, and we'll endeavor to make our time together a wonderful investment of your attention, which we'll thank you for in advance. Those of you who have been in Atlanta for a long time will remember Dr. Michael Lomax from his leadership roles in Metro Atlanta politics. He served in the cabinet of Mayor Maynard Jackson for 6 years and firmly established very strong parks and libraries as a part of his legacy in that role. He served as chairman of the Fulton County Commission for 14 years. And he ran for mayor unsuccessfully in 1993, and then left politics to really focus full-time on his true North Star, higher education. Dr. Lomax was president of Dillard University in New Orleans from 1997 to 2004. And then we were fortunate at UNCF that in 2004, he became the president and CEO of the United Negro College Fund, or UNCF. In his time in this role, Michael has raised more than $3 billion, with a B, and has helped more than 120,000 students gain diplomas at UNCF's 37-member institutions. as you already have started, this is a Type A group. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Lomax. Now, I'm going to open, and then we'll walk through kind of how we'd like to make this work to use your time the best and spread our message the best. Now, in my discussions with several of my fellow Atlanta Rotarians, I've been reminded that sometimes we can make the mistake of assuming that everybody enters a discussion and hears a topic and thinks about it and everybody's on the same page. That's not always the case. And what we've learned is that we really need speakers to provide a context in order to help us really appreciate the importance and relevance of what we're hearing. And that sort of opens up minds a little better. So I thought we'd do a little something different before we get to our guest speaker, that I would take and start our discussion today by providing a little context about HBCUs and why they continue to be relevant and impactful. And then we'll unpack that much deeper with the expert here, Dr. Lomax, and with our colleagues and presidents of member institutions who are here, and then we'll obviously open up to general questions. There are more than 100 nationally accredited HBCUs in the United States, and they break down this way. There are 37 UNCF member institutions, which are private schools that are predominantly located in the Southeast. There are about 47 state-funded institutions, predominantly black, that are part of what's called the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. In addition, Hampton University and Howard University are historically black colleges that are not a part of either group, and they're the two best-known independent HBCUs among a number of others. The number grows when we add Morehouse School of Medicine, Meharry Medical College, Howard University School of Medicine, and Drew Medical College, which are historically black medical colleges and universities and research institutions. There are also a number of other schools that are accredited by bodies other than SACS, NACS, and other regional agencies, and that takes the number higher. Now, I attended the University of Notre Dame, a historically Catholic school, and not an HBCU, just to see if you're paying attention to me. However, I grew up in Atlanta in the 50s and 60s. Certainly was a part of, as a child, the Atlanta way as it was beginning, and the Atlanta way before it began. And my sister graduated from Spelman College. We lived next door to the famous athletic director of Clark Atlanta University, Leonidas S. Epps. And I grew to appreciate the mystique and caring and nurturing, as I was a young person growing up, of graduates of Morehouse College, Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, Morris Brown, and the Interdenominational Theological Center, as they made a huge difference in the growth and development of my hometown and the city I love, Atlanta. In addition, later, my daughter graduated from North Carolina A&T, a Thurgood Marshall College and HBCU, and they prepared her well for the success she's achieving in accounting. So as you can see, I can't escape it. It's wrapped around me generationally, and I wouldn't want to try to escape it. I think it's important that we enjoy it. I think it's important we never take it for granted, that this city has jewels in it that are crown jewels compared to any other city. When we talk about Atlanta and the difference it makes, you'll hear more about that. We'll unpack that later. So as I close, Gallup did some research on HBCUs, and it pointed out, in general, the punchline is there was a significant difference in the level of well-being reported by HBCU graduates in comparison to African-American graduates of predominantly white institutions. It was true across 7 measures that they looked at, but 2 really stood out. One was, does my university prepare me well for life outside of college? And HBCU grads scored that at 55%, compared to 29% for black graduates of primarily white institutions. 55 to 29. That's a gap. To the question of, based on financial well-being, how am I doing? HBCU grads scored that at 40% versus 29%, again, for primarily white institution grads. And I'll add that another study demonstrated that after 10 years of work, after graduation from HBCUs, the average income was $71,000. Now that's a significant number when you consider the alternative to not attending college and to where the family income wealth level was for many of these students. And so now with that said, in that context, hopefully the importance of, the structure of, the meaning of HBCUs is clearer to everybody, and we'll now have our fireside chat. And with that, as I move to my chair, I'll start by asking Dr. Lomax, what economic impact have HBCUs had in Georgia and the Southeast?
Mary is smiling at me, Mary Campbell, because our economic impact study, which was done in 2017 by the Seelig School at University of Georgia, so in this audience, I think we would all say it's a legitimate study, it demonstrated that HBCUs nationally have just under $15 billion in annual economic impact across all of the communities in which they are located. They have 134,000 jobs, and the punchline is, with regard to their students, is that the 50,000 students that they graduated in 2014, the year that we used in this study, had lifetime earnings of $130 billion, which included just under $1 billion more that they earned because of their attending a college and receiving a degree. Milt pointed out that $71,000 annual income. That's a lot when you recognize that on average 75% of the students who attend historically black colleges are low-income, Pell-eligible students, and around 50% of them are the first in their families to attend college. So HBCUs are really engines of economic mobility. They are access institutions in that they admit more low-income students, and they produce stronger results with those students. And I don't think that that's been recognized enough. One of the big philanthropists in this country today is Mike Bloomberg, who is supporting black students who are attending elite institutions. Wonderful, Mike. But those are not engines of social mobility institutions. They have a small number of low-income students. They give them a lot of financial support, and those students move into the middle class. The heavy lift is at HBCUs, whereas the majority of their students are low-income and first generation, and they graduate to move into the middle class. Here in Atlanta and Georgia, there are 7 institutions that we covered. We didn't include Morehouse School of Medicine because we were only looking at undergraduate degrees granting institutions. But the 7 institutions in Georgia, including the Atlanta University Center, but Fort Valley, Albany State, and Savannah State, and Payne up in Augusta, these HBCUs represent 12% of all the 4-year institutions in the state of Georgia. But they enroll 18% of all the black students pursuing 4-year degrees. And they produce 23% annually of all the black students who earn an undergraduate degree. So 12% of Georgia's higher education institutions produce 23% of the degrees. At UNCF, we say that these institutions are punching above their weight. In Georgia, these institutions have an annual economic impact of $1.3 billion. They have 12,000 jobs, and their lifetime earnings for the almost 3,500 graduates in that year would be $9.1 billion. Big impact institutions. That's part of the story that doesn't get told often enough.
You know, Michael, it would appear that after the pandemic, HBCUs would be struggling. So is that the case?
Well, I guess it's one of the ironies of the twin pandemics of the last 18 months. And I say twin pandemics because it was really both COVID and it was renewed anti-black violence, oftentimes at the hands of law enforcement. The irony is, and I bet you every one of these presidents will affirm this, that the balance sheets of their institutions are stronger 18 months after the beginning of COVID, these twin pandemics, than they were in April of 2020. Why, you ask, are those balance sheets stronger? Of course, it's UNCF. No, it's because it's almost as if America decided that historically black colleges were undervalued assets that needed to be invested in if this country was going to deal with the stark racial inequalities that were shown to us in COVID. But let me just say that, that balance sheet is due to $4 billion in additional federal funding just in since the new administration took office. $4 billion in additional funding, including $1.6 billion in debt elimination. HBCUs borrow from the federal government through a development authority. $1.6 billion of that was eliminated. The institution in UNCF that got the largest elimination was Tuskegee, $100 million in debt. Made a big difference. Increased philanthropic support. Hard to say, we don't have all the numbers, but I can tell you that there's one very brilliant businesswoman who was a co-founder of Amazon, who is setting the standard for philanthropy in America, including the standard for philanthropy to historically black colleges, who within the last year has contributed $500 million to 20 historically black colleges and universities. You're not supposed to say whether you got it. You're not supposed to say how much you got. But I think if you talk to Dr. Campbell and to Dr. French and to Dr. Thomas, you might convince them to give up the information. I would make one other point about why they're in a stronger position, and this is really the case here in Atlanta. Young people are applying to these institutions in record numbers. In such record numbers that we don't always have all the dorm space quite ready for them when they show up, but they are happy now. They went to a hotel and now they're in the dorm. But that's very different from what a lot of higher education institutions, including community colleges, where there was a double-digit drop in enrollment. And the real issue for us now is, can we sustain this and maintain not just the enrollment, but the largesse, the investments that are being made. And as the president of UNCF, I would say one great year of federal support and one great year of philanthropic support are insufficient to make up for generations of neglect.
Well said, Michael. And I think we'll hear later, as we hear comments from our colleagues, that another element that's creating strength is the unifying nature of schools coming together. And in particular, I've heard very positive things and observed of how Morehouse School of Medicine has been a key to that and what it's done to help bring schools together that are located around it. And we'll hear more about that. Now, Michael, Atlanta has seen extraordinary growth and development over the last 40 plus years. Interestingly enough, when Sam Cassell ran against Maynard Jackson in 1973, his slogan was, "A city too young to die." Now, we've had black mayors since then, and all are HBCU graduates.
All
but one. And we've had, thank you, we've also thrived with huge economic growth. What role would you say HBCUs play here in Atlanta and in the Southeast?
You know, I want to go back to the point Catherine was asking about and the Action Forum and the Atlanta Way. That really emerged in the 1950s as Atlanta was confronting integrating. And black civic leaders and business leaders joined with white business and civic leaders to ensure that Atlanta didn't have happen to it what happened to Birmingham, and that the confrontations around race were impediments to generations of economic investment and growth in the community. You know, you could argue that they did the right thing for maybe the wrong reasons, but they did the right thing nonetheless. They began to communicate. In that leadership group, representing the black community, were business leaders like Jesse Hill at Atlanta Life and Herman Russell, you know, the great entrepreneur, and I know Jerome is here or was here earlier. Incredible perspectives that they were bringing to the table with folks like, you know, John Portman and others. The other important voice there was religious leadership, you know, Daddy King and but not black academic leadership. Yet, the place where that black leadership was formed was at historically black colleges, including the institutions of the Atlanta University Center. Missed opportunity. Today, that city that was too young to die is flourishing and is an international city. Today, we see Microsoft and Google and Apple and a range of high-tech industries looking to the South for investment and growth and development, looking for talent. And I will tell you where they are looking. They are looking at the Atlanta University Center as the gateway to talent, diverse talent, black talent in Georgia, but as the gateway to black talent at historically black colleges throughout the region, and as a source for innovation and research for their businesses. I would say Atlanta has focused an awful lot of attention on Georgia Tech, on Georgia State, on Emory University and the University of Georgia. The world is focusing a lot more attention on the institutions of the Atlanta University Center, $100 million from Mike Bloomberg for black medical schools. significant investment recently from Google and from Apple, because they see these institutions as critical to their futures. And I think that we should be seeing much more recognition and investment from this community in these extraordinary assets, philanthropically, corporately, and individually. These institutions have not received the kinds of philanthropic support that equivalent, predominantly white institutions have received. I don't get any support, so I can say that. I have nothing to lose.
Well, thank you, Michael. I want to recognize Michael Russell, who is here. You mentioned Jerome earlier. Hey, Michael.
There he is.
And Jerome is still here. And Jerome also sits on the board of an HBCU and member of UNCF Tuskegee, as do a number of others of you who are in the room. And we thank you for your service and leadership. Helen, I know you're on Spelman's board, and others. So what we'd like to do is take a few minutes and see if any of our colleagues who are presidents of these colleges and universities that we just talked about have any comments to make. And then we want to open up for general Q&A across the broader audience. So I'll bring a mic down for you to, we have it here, okay? So
We got the dean wants to speak.
that's right. Okay, Lou.
What I'd like to say is there are 153 medical schools in the country. Some 47 came into existence in the second half of the 20th century. Of those 47, there was one predominantly black, Morehouse School of Medicine. That institution was enabled because of the record of Morehouse College in producing young men who went into medicine. In the early 1970s, 7% of all the black physicians in the country were graduates of Morehouse College. Louis Brown, a local physician, served on a committee that looked at Georgia's health status, found that with 28% of the population in Georgia being African American, only 2% of the physicians were African Americans. The health of African Americans was less than that of whites. He advocated for the development of another black medical school. And because Atlanta was receptive to that, we have this institution today. Many contributed to that. Michael, you may remember you were a member of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. We received support from the Board of Commissioners that Michael Lomax, as a member of the board, and Dotson, the other black member, saw that we received in those days the magnificent sum of $25,000, which seems small today, but that was very significant as a new institution. It gave us credibility. But we also had leadership from Coca-Cola with Don Keogh, the president and CEO. Pete Carell from Georgia Pacific. The story is from the political leadership and the business leadership, as well as the private sector, including Woodruff, this school came into being. This is the environment that Atlanta provides for the educational institutions, and Morehouse School of Medicine, under the leadership now of our current president, Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, is providing that continued leadership in the health of our country. So I wanted Atlantans to know this institution thrives because of the contribution, the environment of Atlanta, the contribution from its various components, and now this going forward into the future, addressing the need for more diversity in the health professions. So Michael, thanks for your work as a Board of Commissioner, as well as your current leadership of the UNCF.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. It was an honor to have been helpful there. I won't begin to tell you about the wonderful opportunities we had with Grady Hospital as well.
Dr. Schmidt-Campbell. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Dr. Lomax and Milt Jones. That was really terrific. I want to make two observations. The first is that Michael was talking about statistics. If you go to the National Science Foundation website and you look at which colleges are producing the most students who earn PhDs in STEM fields, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, what you will find is the top 20 are predominantly HBCUs. Spelman sends more black women to earn PhDs in STEM fields than any other college or university in the country, which is actually shameful when you consider the amount of resources that we all have. But the second observation I want to make is that with Morehouse School of Medicine, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, and Spelman, during this COVID period, as horrible as it was, we all have come together and recognized in each other our strength to complement our students have pathways into medical school, our joint projects like data science, where we can look at data bias, honestly, a Center for Black Entrepreneurship, and the investment that we're making in our own West Side community, which is literally transforming that community. So I think you'll see some changes in the next 5 years that are going to be pretty transformational. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith-Campbell. I've been given the kind of 4-minute warning here, so do we have any other comments before we open up for general questions? Okay. We'll take questions from the general audience now. Or comments.
Now, I'm a recovering politician, so I can make a speech.
That's okay. We got some people here.
Hi, Chris Tomlinson, proud Morehouse graduate. Can you speak to what is going on or the need to invest in the infrastructure? And you talked about a lot of it is we're talking about catching up, and the infrastructure to help these institutions go from just places where people primarily think of them as a focal point for undergraduate education to the rich partnerships that, and some of these already exist, but I don't think people know about being research institutions and then trying to attract those professors and grant dollars.
You know, it's interesting that had a conversation quite recently with Google and a group of HBCU presidents about investing in the research infrastructure, people, and facilities on our campuses. And I think we're going to see these major corporations focusing more on that. The investments that need to be made on our campuses are both, you know, are significant. I mean, a lot of upgrading, new facilities, the kinds of facilities and instrumentation that are required to do the research. I taught English, you know, I don't understand it all, but I know when I see it. Here's some good news, Chris. One is that in the federal funding, there is an opportunity in a major bill that has bipartisan support called the Ignite. And it will make significant $2 billion investment in HBCU infrastructure around research, and you know, enhancing the facilities of the institutions. And we have that up here because one of the things that UNCF does is that we activate interested citizens to contact their senators and their members of Congress. If you go to hashtag HBCU Ignite, you too can in 1 minute let folks know that you think it's important to invest in HBCUs. But that's critically important. I think we're going to see, you've already seen Apple make a major investment in a new facility that they're doing. So we're beginning to see that. We need to see more of that.
Yes, sir.
And so I do want to make this comment because we announced it last November that Morehouse School of Medicine was doing a major partnership with Common Spirit Health, the largest not-for-profit health system in the country, 144 hospitals, 3,500 points of care, and in 22 states. And we are opening up 5 regional medical schools, Morehouse School of Medicine, Common Spirit, and 10 graduate medical education programs. and that is seeded through a gift. So that is seeded through a gift, though, from Common Spirit of $100 million. So we are very excited about this. So when you talk about others nationally understanding also the treasure that we are and how we can continue to be not just great for the state of Georgia, but for the world. And so I look forward to hearing about that more. Thank you.
You're going to silence us, girls, as time's up. Can I make just one other point about that? You know, Atlanta's a very competitive community. And I think it could be more competitive in terms of who does the most to invest in their HBCUs. When Patty Quillen and Reed Hastings decided to give $40 million, and they still got at least one more big gift to make here in Atlanta, to the institution that didn't have a president at the time and has great leadership in George French. But they gave $40 million to Spelman, $40 million to Morehouse, and $40 million to the United Negro College Fund. Wow. A little known story was that the Memphis Community Foundation invested $40 million, set aside $40 million for the endowment of Lemoyne Owen College in Memphis, Tennessee. You know, if they can do that in Memphis, y'all, I think those kinds of things can happen elsewhere. I've been doing this work for a long time. We've been very successful. We've raised a lot of money. There's still a lot of money to be raised. There's money on the table that we're not going to let stay there. But now we're hearing about gifts, not routinely, but frequently, of $100 million or more to institutions that for a very long time have been worthy of that level of investment. And if we want Atlanta to be what it aspires to be, there cannot be winners and losers in higher education philanthropy in this community. There can only be winners. And if there are only winners, Atlanta will be the big winner.
Thank you. I think we need to.
As chairman of the board, I also have to point out to you, when you see the link here, please go to it. All you got to do is hit it. It will ask you for your name and your email address, and it will immediately send a letter to your 2 elected senators and the House of Representatives member who represents your zip code. I will also tell you, and that's automatic, you don't have to do a lot of work. I'll also tell you that the $2 billion started out at 90, and then it was cut to 45. And now it's about to be cut to 2. And if you think those numbers don't work for you, hit that link, write your senator. And I'll tell you, Senator Warnock is a strong supporter of it being a different number. It's got to come out of the House first. And so now I've done my duty for the Government Affairs Group.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you all for your time and attention. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. We appreciate your support.
Thank you. Dr. Lomax and Milt Jones and all of you, thank you so much. You brought the all-star team with you. I'm so grateful we could hear from so many people, and you have informed and truly inspired us. So we appreciate you. Thank you.